Welcome to Trust the Badge. Today, Sheriff Rick Staly of Flagler County, Florida, joins us for this episode. Sheriff Staly has been serving the community for over 7.5 years and is running for re-election for a third term. In addition to his responsibilities as sheriff, he is also the chairman of the board of the Florida Sheriff's Association and is in line to become its president in 2027. Throughout his career, Sheriff Staly has implemented innovative policing strategies, fostered strong community relationships, and made significant strides in reducing crime. We learn more about his journey, insights on modern law enforcement challenges, and his vision for the future. Let's begin with an introduction from Sheriff Staly.
I'm Flagler County Sheriff Rick Staly. I've been the sheriff of Flagler County for about 7.5 years and currently running for re-election for a third term. I'm currently, in addition to being sheriff, I'm the chairman of the board of the Florida Sheriff's Association and in line to be president of the association in 2027. Flagler County has never had a chairman and has never had a president. So if all goes right, we'll make history here in this.
Thank you, Sheriff, for being here. That is Flagler County Sheriff Staly here with us today. To start off, what encouraged you to become a law enforcement officer?
Well, as a teenager, I had joined what was known as the youth deputies with the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. It later became part of the Boy Scouts of America Explorer program in law enforcement, which is what it is today, and that's really the name across the country, is the Explorer program. And I got to learn and meet deputies and learn law enforcement and just really enjoyed it. So I decided to make that my career.
That sounds great. I myself am part of the Explorer program for the Altamont Springs Police Department. It's a great program if you're listening, if you're looking into law enforcement. They take teenagers from 13 to 17 years old, and it's a good experience.
So ironically, I started at the Oviedo Police Department as a sworn law enforcement officer and then went to Altamont Springs Police Department and joined the Orange County Sheriff's Office in 1977. So there are 3 years of municipal policing between Oviedo and Altamont before Orange County.
Wow, I had no idea. Well, that's great. So if any of you listening are interested in law enforcement and around my age, see if your local law enforcement has an Explorer program. It's really great. Sheriff Staly can tell you all about it. I can tell you all about it. You learn what it's like to be a police officer in their shoes, and you learn a lot of valuable lessons. How has the community's relationship with the department changed from your time as a deputy to now as the sheriff?
Well, of course, most of my career was in the Orlando, Orange County area, but I can tell you that the crime is the same from the 1970s to today. A burglary is a burglary, a robbery is a robbery, a homicide is a homicide. But I think the big difference is that instead of doing order of maintenance policing, which was very common back in the 70s and 80s and into some of the 90s, we're now more focused on building those relationships in the community, knowing that law enforcement can't do it all by themselves, that we need the partnership with the community. So when I was elected sheriff of Flagler County, and for your listeners that may not know where that is, it's 30 minutes north of Daytona Beach on the Atlantic coast. I implemented guardianship policing, which is a hybrid of community policing. And guardianship policing recognizes that it takes the community and law enforcement to work together as guardians for the community. So it might be guardians for one street in a neighborhood or one small neighborhood to ultimately, the entire city. And so we have built a very good relationship with the community. Our crime's down over 50% since I've been elected sheriff. And a lot of that is because of our partnership with the community that we use the See Something, Say Something initiative, that if you see something suspicious to let us know and let us investigate it. And as a result, we solve crime, we prevent crime, and we arrest poison peddlers that might be living next door to you. So That's in a nutshell what guardianship policing is about.
Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of community, I read an article recently from observerlocalnews.com stating that your office needs 37 more deputies to keep up with the population boom. What are your thoughts on it? And are you willing to hire 37 more deputies?
So, two things here is that in 2018 and 2022, we had staffing studies conducted by an outside expert, actually part of the University of Florida. Because one of the things I noticed when I was elected sheriff, this had been a uh, severely understaffed and underfunded law enforcement agency, and it was reactive rather than being proactive. So I worked with the county commission, and at one time we were as many as 89 deputy sheriffs short. So now we're only 37, which is still a lot. We're the third fastest growing county in the state of Florida right now, and our population is projected by the University of Florida to grow by 40,000 in just 11 years, which will put us at 172,000. And so I've been working with the Board of County Commissioners in the city of Palm Coast, which does not have a police department. So we serve them and we have a contract with them on how do you fund what we call the deficit deputies, which is what you're referring to. That doesn't even take account the growth that's coming. But we've been working on a plan to hire 12 deputies this year, 12 next year, and 13 the following year. First off, as far, you got to be able to fund them. And I'm not a taxing authority, so I have to work with other elected officials to fund it. No one can afford 37 deputies at one swoop. You're talking over $4 million to do that at one time. And even if I did get the funding for 37 at one time, in today's employment market, I probably wouldn't be able to find 37 qualified deputy sheriffs, even ones to hire to go to the academy. So I think phasing it in is the correct way to do it. The elected officials, Flagler County Board of County Commissioners and the city of Palm Coast, the mayor and council. The next step is the hard part. They got to figure out how to fund it.
The funding is the hardest part of all of it, even though I'm sure you would be more than appreciative to have more officers. The funding is the issue that comes at hand.
Well, we have to make sure that we do not fall back to being a reactive agency just because of our growth. Because when you do that, we're going to lose the gains of one of the safest communities in the state of Florida. In fact, the city of Palm Coast has been tagged not by me but by other organizations as the second safest city in Florida, only behind the Villages, and we're the 39th safest city in the country, according to the USA Today. So, we don't want to lose that.
In terms of what you've been doing as a sheriff and how involved you've been with your community, how involved have you been with community policing initiatives during your time?
So I'm a 24/7 sheriff, like all sheriffs, but I don't sit behind my desk. The car that I drive is about 18 months old and has 48,000 miles on it. So you can tell I'm not sitting in my office, just doing paperwork. I was out today and I pulled over a car and wrote the driver a ticket for the violation. So I'm out there. That's not really necessarily community policing, but I engage the community. You'll find posts on our social media platform. People are saying, "How do you get everywhere?" How you're here and then you go there, and I two things. One is I have a good team, but I believe in engaging the community, and I believe an informed community is a safer community, and so we tell them what's happening in the community. Unfortunately, I have a wife that's very supportive and lets me serve this community 12, 14 hours a day. What I don't get done in my office or on my traditional workday, which tends to be 10 to 12 hours, when I get home, I'll log on to my computer and access our email system and try to get caught up on my emails, which is probably what I'm going to do tonight, actually. And but that comes with the territory of being sheriff. If you want to engage the community, I'm very fortunate that I have an 80% approval rating, and so my reelection, based on professional polling, is very likely to occur with a pretty high margin.
You have so much experience in law enforcement, and I'm sure you have a lot of advice to give, but what do you believe are the most significant challenges facing law enforcement today, and how do you plan to address them?
So it's ironic that you asked that question, because in 1991, when I got my master's degree in justice administration, my thesis was called Futuristic Needs Assessment of Florida's 21st Century Chief Law Enforcement Administrators. And so I completed a study and a survey of current police chiefs and sheriffs then, and then tried to predict the future. And it turns out I was pretty accurate. So what we're seeing today, and actually what my thesis said we would see, it was written 33 years ago, is that we would see social unrest around topics like abortion and civil rights and things like that. And we're seeing that. Political activism, we're seeing that. Budgets are going to continue to be a funding issue. And community policing. Those are kind of the top tier things. So that's what we're seeing today across the country. And I would tell you, just when you see the riots that occurred after George Floyd's incident and various incidents around the country, I would venture to say that if you ask those police chiefs, they will tell you they were doing community policing. And I would tell you, if they were truly doing community policing, they wouldn't have had those riots. And I've been involved in one riot in my career. That was as a young deputy sheriff in Orange County. It occurred in the city of Orlando. And the flashpoint is usually a police action, just like you saw with the Floyd incident. Okay. But the underlying factor is socioeconomic issues generally. And so that's what you saw. And if you look at where these flashpoints have occurred, it was a police action that triggered it, but look at the communities where they occurred. And it was either weak policies on public safety, where criminals thought they could get away with everything, failure to prosecute, or socioeconomic issues in a community. And that's going to continue.
And speaking of George Floyd, because that was a huge headline just a few years ago, sparked the defund the police movement. It's one of the worst movements I can ever recall. In your opinion, what specific scenarios would you say put law enforcement on the downside when projected by the media?
Well, I think it was the way it was portrayed by the media, a lot of it. And I'm not certainly condoning at all what the Minneapolis police officer did. We don't teach those kind of tactics. And I think that you would find, if you researched his background, he had a history of problems, and the leadership failed there because they didn't take action. And so if you don't take action on a rogue cop, then eventually it's going to blow up in your face. And that's exactly what happened here. As far as the defund the police, now it's very ironic that today those same cities are now trying to reverse direction, but the damage has been done. And it's very hard to get it back under control so that people feel safe when you basically let it become the Wild West. And so what aggravates me as an elected official, having to deal with other elected officials, is that they should make the right decision for the right reason. Don't make a political decision because all you want to do is feather your nest or ensure you get reelected. That's not making the hard decisions that serve our community.
And I want to speak to you about the defund the police movement. As we see today, not only in the city of Minneapolis, but many other cities I've researched about. You can read up on Newsweek and NBC News, but the city, Burlington, Vermont, they experienced the movement as well. And what happened was they lost officers at such a fast rate, faster than expected, to the point where crime skyrocketed within the next year. So, what are your thoughts on the defund the police movement, and should there be more funding for law enforcement?
So defund the police was a theory that was pushed on a political agenda, and it's a complete failure. In fact, the Florida Sheriff Association just released a study that we did in conjunction with the Florida Chamber of Commerce, and it was titled Building Stronger, Safer Cities, Avoiding Dangerous Policy Off-Ramps to Secure Florida's Future Successes. And we analyzed what some of these cities have done and the crime that it triggered as a result, such as decriminalizing crime. Doesn't work. Defunding the police, we have a whole section on that, why it doesn't work. Rogue prosecutors, which we've seen around the country. Revolving jailhouse door. Juvenile accountability. You have to hold juveniles accountable or they're going to grow up to be real criminals that are in a prison system, and that's not doing justice for them at an early age and certainly costing the taxpayers more money. And so if you want to avoid all that, you have to support law enforcement and give them the resources needed. Now, in my community, we had George Floyd marches, and here's what we did: we made sure that they could march safely, cross the streets safely. I had deputies on a bicycle that were riding alongside them, helping them cross the street. We handed out water at certain points. I was there, and so we worked with them so they could safely exercise their First Amendment. But at the same time, we were making sure our community was safe. And we were prepared that if it had gotten out of control, we were prepared to go in and stop it. But we didn't have to do that. And part of that's because we built those relationships before George Floyd. And this is proof that doing that works. And finally, I would say to your listeners that go to joinflaglersheriff.com. If you don't want to work in one of those cities that don't support you or a county, we support law enforcement in Florida, and we really support it in our community. And they should come check us out. So I'm going to give a little pitch out there to your listeners to look at us. I have openings. Come join us.
Yeah, please do. And that's a good thing because a lot of people that I get on the podcast who want to let them know that, yeah, our department is hiring. And honestly, in the state of Florida, we are one of the strongest, if not the strongest police states, because we have a very strong program where we not only give bonuses to in-state officers, but even to officers who want to move in from out of state to the state of Florida to police here. I believe they get like thousands of dollars in bonuses. So definitely that's an option if you want to go into law enforcement or are interested in doing it. Definitely check out the Flagler Sheriff.
Let me just add that where can you go with only a high school education and start out at $60,000 a year in a take-home car? That's pretty good money.
Right. That is pretty good money. And a bonus on top of that.
And full benefits. We pay for your health insurance 100%. And we subsidize for family and spouses quite a bit. So, for those that may be looking, agencies are different. Communities are different. What you investigate is the same. It doesn't matter from the West Coast to the East Coast, north to south. A burglary is a burglary. A robbery is a robbery. A theft's a theft. Domestic violence is domestic violence. The difference is the community that you serve. Do they support law enforcement? does the leadership of the law enforcement agency support its men and women, which we do, and we have a very good reputation. We do a lot of de-escalation training, and just because you can legally use deadly force doesn't mean that you should, unless you have no choice. So since I've been sheriff, we have had one deputy sheriff involved shooting, where the individual pointed a gun at a deputy sheriff. There was no chance to de-escalate, and you pointed a gun at a deputy sheriff, you're going to get shot. About another 12 to 15 cases, we could have legally used deadly force, but we were able to de-escalate the individual and take them into custody. So, look at your agencies, because that's the difference: the community that you serve and the leadership.
Thank you for sharing. And do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Not knowing who all your viewers are, but I would say this, that, I've had a great career and still having a great career. Never thought I would be sheriff, but you can do anything you want to do in this country if you apply yourself. And I would continue your education, because I think a more educated police officer is better. It serves the community better. You're not required to have it, but once you come to my agency, for example, after you're off probation, we'll actually pay for your college education up to a master's degree. And
Wow.
so, I would say, if this is what you want to do for your career, I've had a great career. Got shot on duty. I don't recommend that. Saving the life of a deputy sheriff. It's not the way that you want to earn the governor's medal of heroism and some other awards. But fortunately, I survived. He survived. The suspect was shot and served some time in prison for it. But I think that also gives me credibility to my employees, because I've been in their shoes, and I still am out there wearing the same shoes that they wear.
Thank you for sharing, Sheriff. I really appreciate it. And to those of you listening, again, if you are considering law enforcement at any age, from a teenager, you can join the Explorer program, as I believe the Flagler County Sheriff's Office does have an Explorer program. Or if you're looking to go straight to law enforcement, please look into Flagler County Sheriff. They're open in Florida. If you're listening from out of state, Florida has a very strong law enforcement program. We have one of the strongest. We give out bonuses. You have all the benefits, and we have a strong governor as well. Thank you, Sheriff, again for your time.
Yeah, thanks. Let me just add, joinflaglersheriff.com. You can find out all about us there.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Trust the Badge. Please follow @TrustTheBadge on Instagram for updates, and follow Trust the Badge on any podcast platform such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.